I'm gonna get right to it. I've been saying this for about 3 years. Antec is absolutely killing it with cases right now, and the Antec Flux Pro is no exception to that. Let's take a look at this brand new case from Antec because it's got a couple really nifty tricks up its sleeve. Let's jump in.
This video is brought to you by Aorus and their X870 lineup of motherboards. Unleash the power of AMD's latest Ryzen 9000 series processors with the Aorus X870 series motherboards. Built for extreme performance, these boards feature superior power design, next-gen memory optimization, advanced thermal management, and innovative Aorus AI Snatch for one-click overclocking. DIY-friendly innovations like Easy Latch, future-ready Wi-Fi 7, and dual USB 4 connectivity makes the X870 series perfect for gamers and creators who demand top-tier performance. Experience unmatched speed and stability. Upgrade with Aorus. To celebrate the launch of X870, Australian residents have the chance to take part and grab an exclusive Aorus merch pack with any valid X870 motherboard purchase. Link in the description to find out more. Back to you, Nick.
Let's start off with panel removal. To remove the side panel, there's a little notch on the left-hand side of the TG panel. You can pull the panel towards you and then lift that away from the case. The back panel is much the same. You'll notice there's a notch in my right hand and you can pull that case panel towards you and away from the case. The top of the case has a little notch as well, but I typically use my thumb on the corner to lift that top panel, that's right, away from the case. The top bracket of the case is removable with 2 screws, and this makes it a lot easier to install radiators, which I'll show a little bit later. The front panel with those wooden accents is also removable by yanking the bottom of the front panel, and you can pull that away from the case quite easily. And finally, there is the side panel, which covers the PSU shroud that's made of mesh, and that can just be lifted and unclipped away from the case. The fan filter runs the whole length of the case and is pulled out through the front with a handle, and it's just underneath the front panel. And as you can see, this is quite a large dust filter. As for storage in the Flux Pro, the Flux Pro will support up to 6 2.5-inch drives or 4 3.5-inch spinning rust drives. There's a cage in the bottom of the case, as well as 2 removable sleds or brackets on the side just next to the motherboard tray. And you can do either 2.5-inch or 3.5-inch drives in these. And then finally, on the back of the motherboard tray, there are 2 2.5-inch drive mounting sleds. Power supply support is really cool on the Flux Pro. You can have it in this rotated orientation, or you can have it in the standard power supply orientation. The way that Antec has done this is the back panel is removable and it's got an extension cable on it. It's got a right angled extension cable rather, and that will plug into your power supply. This is similar to what we see with small form factor cases, and this is a pretty nice execution for this type of power supply installation. You can also rotate the bracket to have the power cable on the other side, but I'd recommend having it on the left-hand side of the bracket. As you can see here, this is what it will look like when your power supply is installed. It's got 2 routing channels on both the left and the right-hand side of the power supply cut out to cleanly install that extension cable. There's also this included power supply bracket that will allow you to install your power supply in the regular orientation. There's a whole bunch of included fans with the Flux Pro. There's 2 reverse pitch fans on the bottom of the PSU shroud. These are 120mm fans. There's a single 140mm fan on the rear of the case, as well as 3 more 140mm fans on the front bracket of the case. All of these fans are PWM fans, so you have full fan speed control here. Where the Flux Pro really gets interesting is with fan and radiator support. Up the front, we can do up to 3 140mm fans or up to a 420mm radiator. The way Antec has pulled this off is by making the whole front bracket of the case fully adjustable in 5 different positions. This again will allow you to do up to a 420mm radiator up the front. At the top of the Flux Pro, it's more of the same with support for up to another 420mm radiator, as well as up to 3 140mm fans, including 120mm fans as well. And as I showed previously, This bracket is fully removable. This will allow you to install your fans or your radiator outside of the case, and you can put it in right at the end. On the top of the PSU shroud, there's also support for up to another 360mm radiator or 3 120mm fans. In case you didn't want to have any fans on the PSU shroud, it does come with 2 included blanking plates. Finally, on the rear of the Flux Pro, you can install either a 120mm fan or use the included 140mm fan. For cable management, you can see that there's an included cable raceway on the left-hand side of the motherboard tray, and there's a whole bunch of rubber grommets for passing all of your cables through. There's some on the left of the motherboard tray. There's 2 grommets towards the bottom of the case. This would be underneath where your motherboard would sit. And there's also cable pass-throughs towards the top of your motherboard tray. It's got 2 there for EPS power and fan cables, as well as another raceway for your EPS cables on the right-hand side of the back of the motherboard tray. For motherboard support, this will support ITX up to EATX boards with no back connector support. We're seeing back connector support cases kind of drop off a little bit at the moment because there's no new boards that support it right now. As for air cooler support, the Flux Pro will support air coolers up to 190mm in height. That would be quite big if you could find one that high. For GPU support, the Flux Pro will support up to 455mm long GPUs. You can also vertically mount your GPU with basically any vertical GPU bracket because all of the PCI slot brackets can be removed with no horizontal supports. There's also a little included LCD screen. This will give you CPU and GPU temperatures with Antec's iUnity software installed. Taking a bit of a closer look, you can see that, yeah, it's not a very sophisticated solution, but it is very effective. And Antec has done this in the past with other cases. And the way this connects up to your motherboard is through a USB 2.0 cable that will plug straight into your motherboard header. As for PWM and RGB, there is an included hub with 5 connectors for PWM and RGB. This is 3-pin 5V addressable RGB. And the way this connects is with SATA power to power it. You've got your 3-pin 5V addressable motherboard pass-through and PWM pass-through from your motherboard. As for the front panel, there's a power button, there's a RGB control button, there's a headphone and microphone jack that's got the little plug in it. There's also 2 USB Type A ports, a USB Type C port, and the screen control for that little LCD screen. As for the wiring, we've got a USB Type A 3.2 10 gig connector. We've got front panel audio. We've got the USB for the screen. We've got the front panel connector for your lights and your switches, as well as a USB Type C front panel cable. That's everything I think you need to know about the Antec Flux Pro, but let's do our usual thing. Let's do a build. Alrighty, let's take a look at the thermals of the Antec Flux Pro. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the thermals are quite good, especially for a 9950X. The thermals are kept well in check with this 360mm liquid cooler. As you can see with the side panel on, we actually lower the thermals for the GPU. This is typically the case, especially when we have fans right underneath a graphics card, because what's happening is it's making the chimney effect more effective because you're directing the airflow path. Sometimes fresh air from the side is not always optimal. You gotta remember, when air changes its direction, especially at 90 degrees, you're lowering its efficiency. With the side panel on, there's no directional change here for the air. So yeah, thermals are pretty good. Now, if you're interested in any of the parts, there's little cards on screen that say what everything is when we go through those parts of the video, but there's also a PC part picker list down below. What's the deal with the Antec Flux Pro? Well, I've got to tell you, when I took a look at the Flux, which was the smaller version of this, I thought they were the same, but there's actually not a lot that is the same with them, because sometimes what companies will do, they'll have like a base case, like the Flux, and they do a Flux Pro or whatever, and blah, 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 but this is a completely different chassis. It's got different support for everything, and to be honest, this is looking like it's one of the most interesting cases that we've seen in a long time for a few reasons. Fan and radiator support is phenomenal here. It supports 420mm Rads all around, which is very, very cool to see. It's also got that nifty little LED screen down the bottom. Now, I gotta say, the reason why they use a screen like this rather than a proper LCD or like a little OLED is for price. They've got to limit that price somehow, and giving you two of the readings that you're probably going to care about with being GPU and CPU temperature is all you need. Plus you've got the extra button to change those modes anyway. So, you know, there will be a lot of people saying, oh, you know, like it could have been a bit better with the screen or whatnot, but I don't think it really matters, because for me personally, that's cool, but I don't even care that it's there. I would even go as far as saying that they should do a version without that to lower the price a little bit more, but given how much something like that would cost in manufacturing, it probably won't add to the price that much. The build quality and the finish of the paint is phenomenal. Antec has really stepped it up over the last couple of years, and the Flux Pro is no exception to that whatsoever. As for the cable management, I didn't route anything, I just put them where they were supposed to go, and everything lined up very, very nicely. So I gotta say that Antec did a great job with the Flux Pro. On top of that, I decided to use an EATX board because there are much bigger cases out there at the moment that don't support EATX, which is just so strange to me. So yeah, we needed to know what the deal with that was, and we had no problems fitting this new X870E Aorus Extreme AI top in here. I get it, someone's gonna say, hey, you know, Frapple invented wood. What a crazy statement. Well, the wood inlay is fine. It's real wood, and it's done in a classy way. I mean, I said this with the Flux, not just the Flux Pro as well. The wood choice here is nice, and it's not too much. And to be honest, who cares? It's just a little bit of extra style, and it gives us that 1970s speaker vibe. Other than that, yeah, it's just wood, guys. Don't make a big deal about it. Everyone's doing wood now, and they must have found a really cheap way to do wooden cases, which is probably why we're seeing wood in cases, not wooden cases. The thing is, you gotta remember, I see so many cases that it's unusual that I'll see something that stands out to me. The one thing that I like about this case, and it's actually something we're seeing with a few ATX cases now, is they're adopting things they see from small form factor cases. The rotation of the power supply in the basement, to me, is probably one of the best features in this case. So typically with your power supply, obviously you're gonna plug the cable into the back, and with small form factor cases, it's usually a bit of a pain in the butt to get to the power switch on your power supply. But Antec's made this really easy. The power supply is rotated, and you can just pull the side panel off to get to that, so you don't have to reach around the back of your PC. I like that, guys. It's a very, very simple thing, but to me, that makes a whole lot of of sense. So I think the execution for the rotated power supply is very, very good. As for the price for the Antec Flux Pro, you're looking at 179 US dollars or around about 249 Aussie dollars at the time of filming this video. Props to Antec for not screwing us on the Aussie price, because the price difference there isn't as much as it would be. Typically, if a case is $179, you're looking at over 300 Aussie dollars. So being around that 249 mark in Australia does seem to be a fairly good deal. This case is really good. I really, really like it. And I'm pretty sure you guys are gonna like the Flux Pro too. Oh, it's the Flux Pro, not the Flux Pro 2.